Everyone, my name is Rob and I'm a software engineer, and I'm going to show you how to deploy an app onto DigitalOcean using DigitalOcean's container registry and their app platform. So this is basically a way to deploy serverless apps. So I've been asked to go through this just to show basically what the process is. Here are the things we're going to cover. So we're going to go through setting up DigitalOcean very quickly, how to set up the command line interface, which will make pushing your changes to your project a little bit easier, how to Dockerize an example project, how to push it and deploy it, and then also how to connect a custom domain to serve your project from as well. It's probably ideal if you're maybe a little bit new to software development, or maybe you've been experimenting with creating an app but you're not quite sure how to get it onto the internet. This is a relatively low cost way. It's not free. DigitalOcean charge for the services we're going to use about $10 a month as of the time of writing, but you'll need to look at DigitalOcean to see what they're actually charging. So let's get started. The first thing I've done is gone to cloud.digitalocean.com/login, and the first thing you're going to need to do is create an account with DigitalOcean. So if you haven't got an account, you can sign up here, and I'm using Google as my SSO option of choice. So I've already got an account, and when you first sign in, you'll be able to basically set up your account, and you'll probably need to set up a credit card because, as I said sort of in the introduction, some of the services that DigitalOcean offer are not free. Now I'm going to navigate on the left side to storage and container registry, which is one of the things we're going to be using. Container registry will let you store the Docker images that we're going to create in this video. Don't worry if you're not too familiar with Docker, that's fine. This is going to be quite a high level video. I'm not going to assume too much familiarity with any of that kind of stuff, but I'll try to explain how it works. I'm on the $5 a month plan here. There is actually a free tier if you're only going to have one repository, so you could start out on the free tier, and obviously that will save you some money. So that's the first thing that you need to do. The other thing you'll need to do is install Docker Desktop. So I've gone to docker.com, and I'm on a Mac, but you can use whatever platform you want to, and you'll want to basically install the appropriate flavor of Docker Desktop. Right then, so now for this next part, I'm going to assume that you've got the doctl tool installed. Now, I'm not going to go through all the ways to do this because the options are different for if you're on a Mac or Windows or Linux, but I've used Brew to install doctl. But basically, you can go to the DigitalOcean docs here, how to install and use the appropriate option for your operating system. What I'm going to do next is in the DigitalOcean platform, I'm going to scroll right down on the left to the bottom to where it says API under account. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate an access token. This will be a demonstration one. And we can select the expiration. Obviously, the shorter the expiration, you might want a shorter expiration for greater security. I'm going to accept the default here. You can also be quite granular with what your key can do. Your API key. I'm going to allow full access, which is probably not what you'd want to do if you're doing something a bit more serious, a bit more production geared towards production, but this is just a demonstration that I'm going to delete as soon as I complete this demo, so I'm not too concerned for this demo. And you can see you get shown the token here, which again, by the time you see this, I'll have removed it. And what I'm going to do now is go to the terminal and run doctl auth init context default, and I'm going to be prompted to ask for my token, which I will paste in here, and now I am authenticated on the command line. But we've done a lot of the setup, which admittedly is not the most sort of thrilling part of this. So what we'll move on to now is the actual pushing your application onto the interwebs. So I'm going to go to the container registry, and you can see the name of your registry, and you can actually copy it here, and you'll need to copy that. So I'm going to demo this with a little Java application. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're using Python, Node, anything mainstream really, or even not mainstream. I'm using Java because I primarily work with Java and I'm more comfortable with Java, but this doesn't really matter. And I've got a Docker file here which creates a Docker image. So what this is going to do is take the a base image, which is in this case a version of the JDK. It's going to copy my application into the right place, and when a container is started based on this image, it will run the application. And all this application does, not terribly thrilling, it just sort of says hello world. So I think that'll be a good demonstration. And this is currently running on localhost, so it's actually running on my computer, but obviously the goal of this process is to have it run on the interwebs. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste this docker build command here onto the desktop, onto the terminal, sorry. And what this is going to do is this is going to build a Docker image based on this Docker file. This provenance false flag is something I have found when building on a Mac to be necessary when building images, or at least on an Apple M series Mac to be necessary. I'm giving this a tag name, and you'll notice that the tag name starts with the DigitalOcean container registry name, so that's absolutely vital. This final slash is the application name, and I'm also giving it a tag of latest, which will basically mean it will auto refresh every time we make a change. And lastly, we've got a little dot here. So I'll run that. This is going to build quite quickly, in this case, the Docker image. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to my Docker desktop, and you can see here that we've now got an image which is built from that command. So what we need to do now is we need to push that to the container registry. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to run doctl registry login, which is something you only need to do, well, in this case, every 30 days. There is the option actually to run that command with never expire, and then your Docker will be associated with your Docker instance on a computer will be associated with doctl. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look for the Docker images, which I created earlier on, showed you in the desktop app, and finally Docker push, and this will actually push the image that we created a few minutes ago to the container registry. So you can see that'll take a couple of seconds to push, depending on the speed of your internet connection. What we can do is we can actually go back over to the container registry here, and if I refresh the page, you can see that actually this demo application has actually been pushed 1 minute ago. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to navigate to the app platform within Compute, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to create an app, and I'm going to use the container registry, and I'm going to select the demo app that we discussed a minute ago, and this is where that tag of latest is actually relevant, because using the latest tag has a bit of a special property where every time we make an update, your application is going to be redeployed. So it's going to default us to this $12 a month container, but I'm actually going to go for the absolute cheapest one, because I don't think we certainly don't need that, and I think generally, depending on what you're doing, you probably are going to want to go for the absolute cheapest example, unless you're doing something for production where you actually expect to have a lot of users. So what's happening now is this is actually deploying the application onto the interwebs. Specifically, it's creating a container. So you can see that there's actually some deploy logs here, and you can see that the application is starting up. So we'll give that a couple more seconds for it to do a little health check, and then hopefully that will confirm that it started up successfully. Okay, great, so that started successfully, and you can see it's generated a URL for us. And if I visit that URL, you can see that this actually shows the expected information at the expected URL. Now, I want to show you what that latest tag actually does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of text to this. I'm going to recompile the application, which is, again, slightly specific to the Java world. If you're using a different language, the way you'll build this will be different, so I'm not going to get too drawn into that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild the Docker image, and I'm going to push my new version of that. And what we should see is that because we've used that latest tag, the application is going to redeploy for us. So that's pushed, and what we should see is if I go back to the application, in a couple of seconds we should see that the app starts to deploy again. Yeah, so there we can see that there's some activity right now, and we can see that that's redeploying, and in a couple of seconds we'll be able to see that that has redeployed. So I think that's a pretty cool way for you to essentially be able to, depending on if you're looking to build some kind of CI/CD pipeline, or if you just want to be able to deploy your changes quickly for a demonstration project or something like that, you'd be able to essentially see your changes go live almost immediately. So yeah, you can see that that's now updated. So the final part of this that I kind of want to show you is bringing your own domain, because you can see that this is by default running on a domain that DigitalOcean have assigned us. But what you can actually do is you can run this on a domain you own. To do that, you'll need to own a domain. You can get a domain from a registrar typically, and what you'll need to do is click on the networking tab here, and there's actually a section called domains, and what you can do is click add domain. There's a few different ways to do this. The way I've typically found most useful is to let DigitalOcean manage your name servers. So this is a domain that I actually own here, and what you can do is you can take these name servers here and you'll navigate to your registrar. So that could be something like GoDaddy or another one, and what you'll do is you'll basically provide them through their portal, these name servers, and it might take a few hours to update, but essentially to sort of propagate, but essentially then you'll be able to visit your service, your website, through on a given domain of your choice. So that is it really. That's everything I wanted to show you. So to recap, this has basically been a guide for how to Dockerize your application and connect it to DigitalOcean, and how to push the images that you create to the container registry where they'll be stored, and then how to deploy them as containers. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hopefully that makes sense. As I said before, I've done this with Java, but you can really use any language you fancy, and hopefully that all kind of makes sense and you can adapt that to your needs. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions or anything that wasn't clear, and I'll try to clarify and hopefully, yeah, offer some information. I'm not affiliated with DigitalOcean at all, and I'm not using DigitalOcean for any reason other than it's fairly straightforward as a cloud provider, and they have quite a simple API, and it's not very expensive to use. So from the point of view of if you're trying out something, experimenting with developing web services, and you want to deploy something quickly, I think it's a pretty good way to get started. So yes, good luck.